Hey, 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 and welcome to Terry Messenger's Genius Zone. Do you believe in miracles? Well, do you know that you are a miracle and you have the ability to change just about anything in your life? In fact, I am going to show you, demonstrate, and bring on a wonderful lady, a beautiful woman that has so much soul purpose. She is a master in neuro-linguistic programming. She is a hypnotherapist that is of the greatest credibility. And she has a very strong sense of how important it is for us to be able to reframe our lives and to be able to discover the natural ability to make change. But without any further ado, I'm just going to bring her straight on, and I'm going to say, when you wait to the end, you are going to be given a real treat. So stay to the end, grab your favorite bevy, sit back, relax, and meet the beautiful Caroline Kavanagh. Hello, Caroline.
So lovely to be sharing this time with you, Terry. Thank you.
And thank you so much for being here. So first of all, where are you?
So I am currently sitting in the southwest of England. So we're on completely different time zones. And as I say, I always find this quite freaky that I'm starting my day just as you're finishing yours. And I find it amazing that we can do that. So yes, it's a lovely place called Salisbury, which most people, if they're familiar with, is very close to Stonehenge. Which again, very, very spiritual, amazing place.
Wow. So I love that. And I love the fact that there are places in the world that are very spiritual. I used to visit Bali a lot and do a lot of retreats. And there was a specific piece of paradise in Bali called Ubud. And, you know, I could have my eyes closed, and the moment we would drive and get to that space, I could feel my frequency literally rising. And, you know, I'm just beyond excited because I'm meeting with someone who has literally got the same elements of, you know, what you've learned, what you've experienced, and the miracle of what you yourself, because you have a very, very unique brand, and each and every person has that, and that's what I love. But you are a woman who knows how the mind works in terms of neuro-linguistic programming and hypnosis. And I'd like to start with a question for you that you probably, I don't know that you will be able to give me A or B answer here, but if you were to choose which one is the most powerful from A, NLP, or B, hypnosis, would you know which one it would be?
I don't separate the two, actually. So hypnosis is a way of changing the mind. If you think about a radio, you have a radio, but you can tune the radio into hard rock, to, I don't know, pop, to classical music. And so hypnosis is like changing the frequency. It's still the brain, it's still working, but you're just tuning into something differently. And you're tuning into a frequency that makes the tools that NLP use much more powerful.
I absolutely agree with you fully on that. You know, in the industry, it is more traditional, if you look at the numbers and all the people involved, for people to go into hypnosis and then somewhere along the line find NLP. But you and I both did exactly the same thing. You found NLP as I did, and then kind of fell into hypnosis. And, you know, you've obviously just had the incredible wealth of experience that you have as an incredible coach, healer, and leader. And, you know, I'd like you to kind of talk about, I know that when I was growing up, it was really not known much about, and I know you said this to me backstage, about anxiety. And, you know, how important do you think it is for perhaps teenagers? Because you shared with me that you knew that you were an anxious sort of a teenager, and you even held yourself back, which I feel we're going to go in a bit deeper in a little while, from really embarking on massive opportunities that you didn't actually, you know, take up with. And as much as I know you would have probably the same mindset as myself, which is, you know, everything happens for a reason. So, you know, it's almost like that acceptance. But how important do you think it is for our younger generation to have an understanding about themselves and anxiety and all those elements?
I think it's absolutely critical. And this really is the premise of all of the work that I do now, is we all have anxiety. Getting rid of it is not an option, because the role of anxiety, and let's use the most basic word, fear. Anxiety is just another word for fear. Fear keeps us safe. Fear is what stops you putting your hand on something hot. Fear is what stops you driving through red traffic lights. Fear is what stops you from, you know, going out at night in unsafe places. Fear keeps us safe because it wants you to stay in a comfort zone. And we use the word comfort zone, but it's actually familiarity zone would be a much more appropriate term for it. Because if we stay in what we know, you will stay safe.
Yes.
And the part of the brain that runs that emotion doesn't have the wider perspective of it's where you step out of the comfort zone is where you grow. So you have this internal friction going on with one part of the brain stay safe, stay safe. It's nice in here. You know how it works. Whereas the other part of the brain goes, yeah, but out there is where I can grow. So when we step out of the comfort zone, that's the feelings of anxiety. That's the label we give to the chemistry in the body as something that's actually facilitating you to be on your top performance, which is exactly what you want when you're stepping outside of that comfort zone. You want to be fully engaged in the moment, alert, breathing more rapidly, because oxygen is then feeding the mind to make better decisions. So it's an absolutely utopian chemical condition that you need to support growth.
That's just so well said. And I love how you have, you know, just really opened up on fear and why we do fear, and the fact that there's almost a justification that it keeps us safe. And, you know, we all have that saboteur, as you know. And that saboteur, I mean, you understand this very, very well, because you are obviously a very high achiever and you had opportunities as a youngster. And, you know, I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there that are going to really be able to connect and really resonate with this, because how many of us, you know, hold ourselves back? We are really in the way of ourself, and we don't even realize it. But I guess talking about your own experience where you were a high performer, you know, with gym, and incidentally, I was also a gymnast as well. So it's very, very, you know, interesting. I know, it's just so incredible. And then also the university. So can you open up that story for us, just so people out there, because there's going to be people out there that are perhaps may not be so aware of why they are feeling and doing what they're doing and why they're holding themselves back. But your story will certainly help that person to understand themselves better.
Yeah. So As we were saying, when I was at school, a good few years ago now, we all had anxiety, but it wasn't spoken about so overtly as it is now. We didn't have social media. We weren't carrying phones around in our pocket. We were living in the moment. I was a gymnast at quite a high level on the pathway to heading towards the Olympics. But I recognize now, reflecting back, that I was scared of where that path would take me. I came from a very humble background. Finances were very limited. And I was aware that should I go down that path, it was such a stretch outside of everything that I knew. It scared me. So I took myself off that path. I ceased to be a gymnast.
Wow.
And then 5 or so years on from that, I had an opportunity to go to university. But I didn't exploit that opportunity, didn't go to university at all, because no one in my family had been to university. My parents didn't drive. There were some practical reasons, but it was so far outside of what I knew that it was too much of a leap for me to take. So I didn't take that leap. I stayed in my comfort zone.
That is very interesting, because what do you reckon's going on for us when we're holding ourselves back? I mean, I feel that it's the stories, and we're going to go into the reframe very soon as well. And obviously the fear of, what if I fail? What if I get judged? What if I succeed and nobody likes me because I'm too successful? I mean, there's all sorts of stories that can happen, but there's also that saboteur that's kind of like the monkey mind. We're telling ourselves that, don't do that because you're not going to be safe, as you've very well described. And, can you talk me through the way that you obviously cottoned onto this, and then you went through NLP? And I noticed that one of the things that you talked about being your favorite, one of your not favorite modalities, but one of the, the first ones that was quite life-changing, that I know that if every person on earth got to hear this, their life would be very, very different. But it's called reframing.
Mm-hmm.
And can you perhaps talk us through what a reframe is, perhaps how you were able to turn that around? I'm not sure whether you reframed yourself or you had to do some work on, yourself growing up, because, they say that our formative years, 0 to 7, quite often. So I'm a high achiever, very much like you. I can hear you're a high achiever. So I had this kind of nonsense voice that gave me the impression from very good parents and well-meaning parents that I had to succeed to be acknowledged and to be worthy. But that was my own story. So can you kind of open that up, and how we can reframe things, and, what your own personal experience was through that?
Yeah. And if I may, Terry, I know we're going to do a little exercise at the end, which I'm really looking forward to sharing with you, but I'd like to do something very simple now, which hopefully will put everything that you've just said into a neat little package.
Perfect, because that's what's come.
Yeah. So you've already mentioned it. What if? We all have what I call the what if monkey. What if it goes wrong? What if I fail? And your mind will answer any question that you give it. So what if you fail? Well, then people are going to laugh at me. And if people laugh at me, I'm not going to have any friends. And if I'm not going to have any friends, I'm going to be really lonely. And if I'm really lonely, and it goes down that path like an absolute nuclear bomb. Yeah. And very quickly, you're in a place of absolute desolation. And that, again, comes back to a very primitive survival technique, in that it goes down as far of that path as it can to say, can I survive that? In which case, if I can survive, then yes, there's risk, but it's not a terminal risk. And what a reframe does is what I call flip it. What if you don't? Because the brain goes, oh, well, what if I don't fail? Well, then I'll have loads of friends and then I'll be really successful and everyone's going to love me and I'm going to be rich. And it goes down exactly the same escalation path, but in a positive route.
Amazing.
That's a reframe. Because
and that's what we do, isn't it? As humans, we tend to go down that track.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's about, I love what you just said about, you know, you'll go down the same rabbit hole, you know, in a different way of saying it, but at least you're going down a new rabbit hole. Do you think that has a lot?
Going down a gold-lined rabbit hole.
I love that. But do you think that sort of comes from the questions, like you just said something very powerful, and I just want to bring that into conscious competency for a moment, and that is that, you know, any question you ask yourself, your mind will find the answer. And, you know, that's gold right there, because, you know, the quality of our life, like Anthony Robbins says, is the quality of the questions that we ask ourselves. So, you know, if you were getting a person who, for example, now we're going to talk about a very powerful story. Now, I know that, and you and I both know this, you put anyone in front of us as a really great subconscious coach, you will know how to move them forward. You don't need a niche. You know that. We only have a niche because that's what the online space kind of demands. But the fact is, when you are such a highly, you know, empowered hypnotherapist like yourself, and you have so much experience and success and passion in what you're doing, you had a person that changed their whole narrative after you'd complete a hypnosis session with them that took them so deep into a trance that you got scared, and then they had their own reframe. Would you like to talk us through this? Because this is a story about a woman who was on the road to a terminal illness and given 6 months to live. And that was back in 2014. But today she is alive and well. So can you talk us through that?
Yeah. This story has such power for me, and I keep it very much at the front of the mind for everyone that I work with, because it's the power of what you believe. What you believe are like the pinnacles that support your life, but they're not cast in stone. You know, I often say to people, religion is one of the strongest belief sets that people have, but people change religions. They're not cast in stone. So this particular lady, she had a medical condition. So she has the BRCA gene, which is a female gene that gives you a high predisposition to having female-related cancers, such as breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and so on. And when she came to me, she had had 4 cancers. She'd had 3 lots of breast cancer, resulting in a double mastectomy. She'd also had ovarian cancer, and a 5th tumor had arisen in her body. And again, the assumption it was cancerous. And she came to me and she said, Caroline, I do not have the energy to fight this anymore. And she was a friend. She'd experienced hypnosis. I'd worked with her on dealing with a phobia very, very successfully. So she was experienced with the power of hypnosis. And I remember so succinctly saying to her, well, I'm not ready to lose you yet, so we're going to fight this together. And I took her into a hypnotic state. And in normal hypnosis, you change the brain waves from beta into alpha into theta, but she went way beyond that and went into what is termed a somnambulistic state. So it's a very, very deep state of relaxation. And it's often associated with things like monks who practice meditation for a very long time. And in a somnambulistic state, the body has calmed so so deeply that you can rarely see any respiration. The blood pressure drops so low that skin tonality changes. And I was looking at this person that I knew and loved, thinking, oh my goodness, she's died, because I couldn't even see her breathing. But what she was doing is, deep inside her mind, was running around turning off all of the BRCA genes. Because in our discussion before the hypnosis started, I'd said to her, well, look, you've lived 40 years of your life without having cancer, so the BRCA genes were turned off, but something turned them on to start creating cancer cells. So if something turned them on, why can't we turn them off again? And that was enough of a possibility for her to go, let's give it a go. So she had gone deep into her mind and was running around going, turn off, turn off, turn off. And turning off all the BRCA genes, her belief was then, I cannot make cancer cells anymore.
The reframe.
Belief set. That was the reframe. I cannot make cancer cells anymore because I've turned off the functionality that was doing that.
Wow.
And that was in 2014, when she had been given 6 months to live, because her body was so depleted through the previous chemotherapy, radiotherapy. The medical profession said, your body can't take anymore. You are on a palliative care program.
Yeah.
It's now 2015. She is thriving. And the last conversation I had with her was 2.5 years ago. And she said, oh, Caroline, she said, I've had another scan. They found some shadows on my lungs. So they're all saying to me, oh, my dear, lung cancer. She said, and I told them I don't make cancer cells anymore. And they just laughed at me, at a very kind of, oh, bless her, she can't accept the reality. And the biopsies came through and showed it was just infection. And she said, I was so smug when I said, told you I don't make cancer cells anymore. That is the power of belief. That's the power of the mind.
Yes, that is just such a powerful story. And exactly, it is the power of the mind, and even more so the power of belief. She totally believed that she switched all of those off, and she did.
Yes.
She switched them all off. And as a result, she still lives today, and she's healthy and happy today as a result of that. And, it really brings me to say, because, I teach people, the inductions, the hypnotic inductions, and also obviously hypnotherapy and NLP. And as I was doing a training today, I was saying to the person, the real magic that I see it is getting a person to kind of totally abandon their saboteur mind and, find their sage, find their presence, and find their inner peace. And I guess in that moment of awareness, do you feel that a really good hypnotherapist is so powerful because they have, apart from the fact that they have a gift, and I believe it's a God-given gift, do you believe that taking them into that deep relaxation, like what you were describing with her, we call somnambulant, but that effect where it is almost so she looks like, you thought she was dead almost, where she was just so deeply relaxed. Do you think that's the art of being able to really take that person for that hypnosis I'm talking about specifically? Because on this topic, she went in, she healed her cancer, she turned off all of those, those bad genetics and all those cells, and she completely recreated a new life. Do you think that came from the induction and the fact that you were able to build rapport with her and take her deeply into trance, or what do you see as the magic that was in that?
Yeah. A metaphor that I use a lot with the clients I work, especially with teenagers, is it's like learning to swim. You're going into the swimming pool, and the deeper you go in, the easier it becomes to swim. It's actually very, very hard to swim in very shallow water. So the further you go into the water, the easier it becomes, the more buoyancy there is. And I'm not in the water with them. I'm standing on the side of the pool, making sure that they can swim, but also guiding them to do the technique better. So in a long and convoluted answer to your question, it's a combination of both. So I have the skill as a swimming teacher to be able to say, well, actually, if you lift your elbow a bit higher and stretch your arm a bit further, you're going to swim better. But that person has got to be willing to do it too.
Yes, yes. And she was very willing. Yes.
Yeah. So all of the clients that I work with, the first session I have is what's called a chemistry session. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. You know, I can be a little bit weird, and that's okay. I'm happy on planet weird.
You don't want to be everyone's cup of tea.
No,
you're doing something wrong if you are.
Yeah. So the chemistry session is very much designed to empower the person that's working with me to decide if working with me is the right thing for them. Do they like the way that I work? Because again, I'm quite direct. I don't mollycoddle people. I want them to get the results, and I want them to work hard. And if they're not prepared to work hard, go and see someone that will go, ka-ching, that's another session fee. Thanks. See you in 3 years' time. Let's keep going. That's not me. I want results. I want results quickly, and you're going to have to work there. So
I feel like that's part of the territory, though, isn't it? Because we see change works, we are very focused on results.
Yeah. So that chemistry is so important. And again, it comes back to, would you go for a swimming lesson with a swimming teacher that you didn't trust? Or had only done, you know, they're a swimming teacher, but all they've done is watched a couple of YouTube videos and pronounced themselves as a certified swim teacher. That's the world that we live in. So you need to make sure that the person you're working with has the qualifications, that really does know what they're doing, has the training. Look for the evidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also be prepared to put the work in yourself. You're not going to get the results passively. You have to be an active, willing participant with a purpose.
Yeah.
You know, and going back to my lady with the BRCA gene, strong enough, you know, probably the strongest purpose. She wanted to live to see her grandchildren.
Yes. It's interesting though, isn't it? Because there's such a subconscious element behind so many things that happen to us, like the subconscious sabotaging that we do on our lives. And I often think to myself, even with my story, I won't go into it, but many people who are sort of up close and in my community understand that my husband is going through something very, very, you know, he's in full-time care. And he basically has, you know, vascular dementia that is completely complex with everything else. But, you know, I'm looking at this man and I'm going, in some strange, weird and wonderful way, you are living your best life, or what you thought was going to be your best life, because he has so many elements of what the subconscious may have called forward. Like, he has my undivided attention. He has, you know, 5 meals a day that are given to him. He has this incredible amount of attention that I know that he just commands, and he's just got this sense of entitlement. But, you know, I look at every person and I always look at, you know, there is a subconscious journey. There is a reason that this happened. I mean, we were talking backstage before we jumped on board here, and we both had timeline in common where we both encountered a very powerful experience. And if I can share mine, and then I'm going to go over to yours. But just very briefly, like yourself, again, I put my hand up for this one, and I remember it distinctly like it was yesterday, and this is going all the way back to 2006, and I had to map out those 3 elements, where this is the difference with counselling, and I totally agree that counselling is there for a good reason, as psychology and everything is, but the work we're doing is very, very fast. So when you've been trapped in a, kind of like in a paradigm for years and years and years, you deserve to be set free if that's what you truly want. And that's why we basically like to break the chain. We're dealing with 3 elements of our life, like 3 times in our life. That's what I went through, where I mean, it may have happened 133 times in different kind of scenarios that I, experienced the same kind of trauma or what it was that I was dealing with. But with those 3 significant events, by kind of like knocking down those 3 walls, the whole ceiling is collapsing on the attachments to that, which makes it so fast. And I just remember coming out of it going, oh my gosh, what just happened? But you said it very, very well. And that is that when we are going back, because I don't know whether you're aware of this, but a lot of the new coaches coming up today are saying, oh, no, you don't have to go back and do any work. But to my thought, I really believe when you don't go back in time to do the work, what you're doing is it's like pulling a weed out from the top of the weed. You're not going right down into the root. And, I wonder if you can sort of shed some of your own light on what you expressed about being able to go back, because this is what I think people are missing when the new coaches that are coming through are doing 2-day courses. And that is that you are literally, you have the wisdom of today, and you're going back and you're being able to heal the inner child. But may I ask you for your story and to shed a little bit of light around that?
Yeah, and it's going to be another medical story, actually, but it's very, very relevant. So I was very asthmatic as a child, to the point that I missed much of the first year of my school because I was so asthmatic, often leading to bronchitis. And every morning when my mum dropped me off in the playground, she would say to me, don't run around at playtime because you'll have an asthma attack. So every single day, that's what I heard. Don't run around in the playground because you'll have an asthma attack. Time went on. As I said, I became a gymnast. Sport was my life. And bring clock forward, in my early 20s, I would spend lots of time in the gym. I could do a really, really hard physical workout. But if I tried to run a quarter of a mile, and I would be wheezing and puffing away on my Ventolin. Wow. So it was nothing to do with my physical ability, because my fitness was through the roof, but it was this message. It was this 5-year-old in the back of my head going, if we run, you'll have an asthma attack. You're running, therefore you need to have an asthma attack.
Yes.
So using timeline therapy, the therapist that I was working with, I was a guinea pig on my own course, took me back so that I could tell that 5-year-old is you can run. I give you permission to run, because of course it's not running that gives you the asthma attack. It was the fact that you were really ill at the time. That's what was giving you the asthma attack.
Wow.
You have bronchitis now. The evidence.
What a reframe. Boom.
Reframe. And literally after that session, the next morning I went out and I ran 2 miles.
Wow. That's profound.
So
that is that if I was asking for a metaphor about, reframing, you just said it. And this is what the audience can do. You can reframe something, but in a way that what Caroline just said, where she made a decision, you made a decision. And when you make a decision, like your client made a decision, she turned everything off.
Yeah.
So all
But
the pains
what I'd love to pick on, Terry, is I use a very similar metaphor to you as a weed in a garden. If you had just talked about that logically, yes, of course, I know I don't have asthma now. I can run. But that didn't stop me wheezing every time I tried to go for a run as a 23-year-old, because the root that was feeding that behavior was deep down in the soil. You couldn't see it consciously. So that's what hypnosis does. It allows you to bury down beneath the surface level to understand what is feeding the behavior. And often those roots are laid down before the age of 7. They're not part of the conscious awareness. And that's why hypnosis has such powerful and rapid results. And my sort of gardening metaphor is I come in with a toolbox and I give my clients a trowel and teach them how to use it. So not only can they dig the roots out, they've then got a trowel to dig out all the other weeds that they've got in the garden too.
100%. And I feel that's why I too fell in love with neuro-linguistic programming and hypnosis, because all of a sudden you've got these power tools in your hands. And if you're going to wake up depressed because something has triggered you from when you were 7 years old, but you're still replaying that 35 or 40 years later, damn straight, if you could have the power to change that, why wouldn't you? Absolutely. If you could change the paradigm to create a new way of succeeding, a new way of moving forward. And this is exactly the work that Caroline's doing. So, high level people that are held back suddenly smash the ceiling of that, limitation. And that's exactly what it's all about, because we're just setting up our own limitations through our own story. But, if I was, and we're going to go over to a special that you would like to bring, because I feel that this is going to be attached with the, final question I always ask my people, and that is that if there was something when you jumped off this show that you thought, even 5 years from now, that person who's absolutely praying for you, Caroline, they're out there and they listen to you, they listen to this story, they can see the trust, they can feel the trust, they know that you've got that experience. I usually ask the question, what would you want to share with that person who really, wants to be in your portal, your space, your vortex? But I'm going to hand over to you, because I would love you to perhaps just allow yourself to bring out what you feel called to do as a very powerful and passionate and extremely incredible practitioner and coach healer that you are.
So the examples that we've spoken about today are quite exceptional. Someone with a BRCA gene, myself with asthma. But what I would love to share is a very simple technique that I think everyone, and I say that very deliberately, everyone at some time, and often a lot of the time, experiences, and that's the fear of judgment.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
I want you... and you might find this a little bit more challenging with your background, but let's run with it. And hopefully your listeners will do this actively as we're talking about it. I want you to think about someone that you have an issue with at the moment, where there's friction. Yeah, and it may be a client that you're just not resonating with. It may be a neighbor who you're just finding there's some friction there. There's some animosity. And you are recognizing that they are judging you negatively. Do you have someone in mind?
Yeah, I realized that it was a little bit tougher, but yes, I can find someone. Yes, of course.
Yeah. Okay. So that person is judging you. And let's just start by, again, being very brutally honest. We all judge each other. It's natural. And because you are perceiving their judgment negatively, you are responding in negatively. So when we judge negatively, you're looking at all of the differences, but I now want you to think of that person and start thinking about all of the similarities. Yeah. So let me take you through an example. I have a particular person that I've done this exercise with. She's causing me an awful lot of problems, holding me back in a career separate sideline. But I started to think, okay, we're both women. We're both women who have children. We're both women who have children who have a passion in the same sport, netball. We're both women who want to help others to be better at netball. And the more I started to look for the similarities, the quicker all of that fear of judgment started to fade away. So I would like you to now do the same with this individual that you have in mind. Start thinking about all of the things that connect you in a positive way.
You know, I processed so fast as you were giving all your examples. I was doing it, and I was finding some, even though we're in a completely different age category and everything, but I was able to find 3. But let's see if I can find a few more. And if everybody listening can do this. So, you know, find your person and find the similarities as Caroline has facilitated here. Yep, got it.
Yeah. And now, having found those similarities where you've turned the energetic bond into something that you share rather than something that are repelling you, notice how you feel towards that person. Do you fear that judgment in the same way?
Definitely softened. And because it's so present as well, it's interesting that the universe, God, gives us what we want, because I was actually struggling with this today, and I was wanting to resolve that feeling and angst because I knew that I was having that feeling. And like you just said, you are sort of portraying that, so it's mirroring, and then you're putting it out there. And if I had spoken to you 8 hours ago, I would have, I used some resources and my own set of techniques, but doing exactly what you just said. I haven't heard of that one before, where you look for same similarities and bring it in. You know, sometimes I thought for a moment you might get me to shrink her down to when she was just a child. No. For example, and see her as an innocent child.
And that's a lovely thing to do, but it's not real in the moment. Whereas who that person is the moment is who you're interacting with. So again, coming back to my particular situation, this particular lady, you know, I perceived that she was being overtly mean to me. So I was then emanating hostility and recognizing that I was bad mouthing her, and I'm not naturally a negative person, but it was just going dum, 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 dum. And the more I was angry at her, the more backlash there was. But by doing this technique, I went from that overt hostility to actually looking at her and feeling sorry for her, because I recognized that she was actually feeling really threatened. So by completely softening my reaction to her and going, you're vulnerable. So your hostility towards me, your aggression towards me is coming from a place of fear. Yes. And then I can't be angry at someone that's scared. I empathize with them. And by changing my energy, it changed her energy, and it's completely de-escalated again.
That is amazing. And that's the fastest, perspective shift I've actually encountered. I mean, Ian and I, my husband and I, went across to Melbourne and did a 2-day breakthrough experience with Dr. John Demartini as another certification, where you're breaking down those people you need to forgive. And that takes 2 solid days and a very agonizing process that you take yourself through. But it comes down to one solid thing, and that is that we like things that are very similar to ourselves. So we tend to like the same.
Mm-hmm.
And it really lands with me, because it also shows me why NLP is so big on rapport. And, you know, they teach you how to kind of like, you know, not mirror, but, you know, to have that kind of rapport and that strong sense of togetherness. But what you've just done has just explained all of that. And oh my gosh, I'm sure for every single person out there, I bet you there's not one person that'll listen to this that doesn't have a problem with someone that they cannot use this technique with.
I'm sure you've come across the same, Terry, but a lot of people say to me, oh, all this hypnosis stuff, it's all woo-woo. It's quantum physics. It is about energy. It is about energy. And what that exercise done, it changes the energy of animosity, anger, friction to one of love. And again, I use that word very deliberately. Do I love this particular individual? I can't put my hand on my heart and say yes, but I'm a heck of a lot closer to it than I was before I did that exercise. And that then changes my energy. And when I'm putting that energy out, it changes what she receives. It's magnets, like attracts like, as you've just said. So if you're emanating hostility, you'll receive hostility. If you emanate love, you change the energy that you get back. This is quantum physics. It's not woo-woo. It's not esoteric. It's real.
It's energy. It's motion. Energy in motion, isn't it? It's quantum physics. Exactly it. So this has just been such a pleasure, and I can't wait to go to radio with you. And we'll do another modality on radio. And what I would love to say is, if there is someone out there, you know, that's tuning in here and they are going through their own personal suffering, you know, have you got any last words that you would like to say, so that you can obviously express anything that you may have on your heart? That can be obviously quite aligned with that person who's really praying for your service.
There are lots of people that I've come across, and I'm sure people at the moment listening to this saying, but yeah, it won't work for me. And my response to that is, if it's possible for anyone, it is possible for you. So there is evidence right the way throughout history. At one point, people believed that if you sailed off the edge of the world, you fell into abyss. But Galileo didn't believe that, and he circumnavigated the world. Bring time forward into the, I'm not sure about my timeline here, early 50s, I think. The belief was you couldn't run a mile in less than 4 minutes. Roger Bannister didn't tie into that belief. He changed that. He broke the 4-minute mile, and loads of people did it afterwards. So whatever your challenge is, if there is someone that has the same challenge that has overcome it, it's overcomeable, if that's even a word, for you too. If it's possible, it's possible for you.
Absolutely. Whatever the mind can conceive, you can achieve. What absolutely incredible words, and what an amazing teacher, coach, healer you are, Caroline. And I just want to thank you so much for, you know, bringing so much to the show. And I can't wait to go to radio with you. And I look forward to just being able to connect with you again really soon.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone that's invested their time in listening. Your time is a huge value, and I appreciate it.